And a hush falls over the crowd. Almost. I wish I could. So what?
Well, I'm looking at the screen over there and seeing how ugly it is when I have my phone on the back of the chair.
Where do you think you are?
Dressed up.
And you dressed, yeah.
Dressed up. I look like this.
Yes, thank you for asking, by the way. It's
Years ago, my mother was sick, my father got the same thing. He got a second. And it was up to them. Their opinion was we wouldn't have treated it as a possibility as they did used to. I'm not saying it would have
been different,
I don't think it would change things.
but you know you got the better. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it just, oh, it's just it by the minute. Okie dokie. All right. I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Riverwoods. And can you please stand with me to say the pledge? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mayor Ford,
Present.
Trustee Clayton,
Here.
Trustee Dickon,
Here.
Trustee Eastman,
Here.
Trustee Hollander,
Here.
Trustee Jamerson is absent, Trustee Smith.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we get going with our regular order of business, I want to say thank you to somebody who's been at a lot and all of our meetings and has made it possible for live streaming to actually work, and somebody who's going to be leaving us very shortly to go to school. So Griffin, if we could, on behalf of the board, on behalf of the village, thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Really, don't go too far. ILL, right? All right, moving on. First order of business is the approval of minutes for the Board of Trustees meeting for April 2nd. Do I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any comments or questions on those minutes? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The next two are minutes for the executive session, and unless there are changes, I'd like to entertain a motion for approval for both of those minutes. If there are changes, we will need to go into executive session. Oh, one motion for each one. I'm sorry. So let me just summarize. If there are changes to either one of these, we will need to go into executive session to discuss. If there are no changes to the minutes of the executive session of May 2, 2023, may I please have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions or changes? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay. If there are no changes to the executive session minutes of March 20th, 2024, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any changes or comments to those? Okay, hearing none and seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next order of business, the Finance Director's report. We'll start with the approval of bills. May I have a motion for the approval of the bills as presented? No motion for approval of the bills as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second? Are there any comments or questions on the bills? Trustee Hollander, please.
Yeah, I think I sent in to Community Services Director of Finance about the significant number of grinder pumps. I think we're in the dozens or $100,000 or something. I don't know what the total is, but maybe you could explain the story behind that.
So there was a bit of a backlog in terms of getting the invoices from the last few months of 2023. So that's why there was more activity here in April. I think the last time we actually cut a check to this vendor was back in October. So there were several additional months of invoices that needed to get processed. So that, I think there was about just shy of $10,000 of those invoices were from the last couple of months of 2023.
That's a good question.
Maybe it's
Thank you.
my ignorance, but this is, it was about 7-8 months ago. I don't understand how the bills, I don't understand the process of why a bill in October would be paid now.
So these particular bills get funneled through GHA for their review. But from the email chain that I could see, it looks like this vendor in particular, HT Stranger, was behind in getting a portion of these bills to GHA for their initial review. GHA reviews them and then sends them along to our staff for entering as well. I think it was further compounded because I think that the person they sent them to at GHA was out of office when when HT Stranger sent them late to begin with. So there was a little bit of a backlog in getting those invoices from the vendor to GHA for their review, then to staff for our review and entering.
Okay.
If I could pile on a little bit, Henry, those are points well taken. There was a thought some time ago about getting a grip on the grinder pumps and how we might handle this as a little bit more efficiently, and perhaps have better oversight of not only the pumps, but the age of the pumps, the turnover,
Right,
and maintenance and so forth. So point well taken. Thank you.
I second the motion.
Okay. Are there any further questions or comments? Okay, a roll call, please.
Trustee Dickon?
Aye.
Trustee Eastman?
Aye.
Trustee Hollander?
Aye.
Trustee Smith?
Aye.
Trustee Clayton?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Director Vasquez has a quarterly report for us, so I will ask him to please present that.
Thank you, Mayor. Presented tonight are the unaudited financials for the first quarter of 2024. On a related note, we just had our auditors on site for field work last week, and we'll have the audited 2023 numbers presented when the audit is complete in the early summer. Starting with our general fund, on the revenue side, the main outlier here is the police department revenue. However, a significant portion of the police revenue budget comes from property taxes, which are distributions that pick up pace late in spring into summer. The 4% number you see here is similar to what we experienced last year at this time as well for that particular revenue. For administration and building departments, revenues are trending near the 25% mark through the first quarter. We should see more activity for building revenue as we get to the warmer months, although we are trending ahead of where we were in the building department revenue at this point last year. Expenses in the general fund are overall near 20% for being a quarter of the way through the year. One item of note is the general fund deficit at the end of the first quarter is just over $130,000, which is approximately 75% of our expected deficit for the year. However, since the property tax revenue doesn't start coming in until after the first quarter, I don't believe this is a concern for our annual projections at this point in the year. For example, last year at this time, our general fund deficit was at 120% of the expected deficit for the year, but we still ended up with an operating surplus by year end. In the MFT fund, revenues are trending right on target at 25% through the first quarter. You may recall my note from the last quarterly report where I said we were removing the Rebuild Illinois program from expected revenue as the final payments related to that program came in 2022. With this correction, our revenue forecasts are now much closer. Expenditures from the MFT fund are below budget at just over 12.25%. Thankfully, with fewer snow events than normal in the early months of the year, we've had fewer invoices for snow removal. In the water fund, revenues are just under 19% of the annual budget amount. The warmer months will bring more water usage, so that number should look closer to target when we get to the next quarter. We are still trending ahead of where we were last year at this time, and a factor in that is the correction that was brought to the board's attention last fall, where we discovered that the commercial rate needed to be corrected. Expenditures in the water fund are low at this point in the year. However, much of the budget for water expenses is related to maintenance work and capital projects that happen later in the year. In the sewer fund, revenues are at 32% of the budgeted amount for the year. Expenditures are low at this point of the year, but again, much like the water fund, much of the work to happen in the sewer fund is expected to happen later in the year, including capital projects. And finally, in the capital fund, revenue for the capital fund is based on a transfer from the general fund as well as grant revenue, neither of which have happened at this point in the year. Expenditures are at 10.5% for the annual budgeted amount. It should be noted that we budgeted a high expenditure scenario for our capital fund, so all projects may not ultimately be approved to happen in 2024, which could affect what that percentage looks like as we move through the year. These are the areas that I noted from the financials that were included in the board packet.
Are you ready for questions?
Yes, I'm ready for questions.
Trustee Eastman, then Trustee Hollander, please.
Sure. I was just going to ask, what's driving the higher expenditures in the building department fund for the general fund? It looks like those are significantly higher than, I'm just curious as to why that's higher than last year.
And the building department expenditures.
So it looks like year to date, it's like 115 versus 69 for last year in the first quarter, which seems
One
significantly
particular portion is at this time last year, we had a part-time employee as our director. Now we have a full-time
okay. So that would go
director,
in
which
the,
so a lot of personnel
okay, a lot
costs.
of it would be personnel. Okay, makes sense.
Okay, Trustee Hollander, please.
This might be known, but I don't know that I remember. Is the water fund supposed to be self-supporting, exclusive of repairs, or inclusive of repairs? In other words, what we collect, is that supposed to be the same as what we spend? Or is there a percentage of that which is set aside for expenditures, for repairs and things?
For the revenue we collect should cover our regular expenses as well as capital expenses in the water fund, so it should be self-sufficient.
Is it?
We did discuss back in our finance workshop how there were a significantly higher number of capital dollars in the budget for 2024 compared to other years. It was just over 1.4 million in capital, when in most prior years we're generally been around the $400,000 to $500,000 amount for capital projects. Now, a large portion of that, just over maybe $870,000 is related to the water main project on Saunders Road. So that is a significantly larger capital project that we're taking on this year, which is difficult for the fund to handle that much more capital than it normally does.
Can I just interject for a second? One of the ways that we have operated the water fund until now, and Tony's really just starting to figure out what we should do going forward, is we have the reserve policy of having a $2 million balance. And the reason for that is that we didn't expect the fees that we charge to give us adequate money to pay for all operating amounts and capital repairs every year on a flat basis. We expected there to be ups and downs so that as we draw into that reserve, if we find we're not replenishing it, then, and that's part of the exercise I think the director is going through right now, we have to raise rates to replenish some of that reserve. So we're starting to see that because the capital projects come in jagged amounts. You know, sometimes it's a $200,000 project, sometimes it's an $800,000 project. So when you're trying to set rates, it's very difficult for the rate to always smooth out all of those things. And I think that's part of our challenge.
Let me rephrase it then. Over a 5-year or a 10-year period, I don't know over what period of time the recommendation is, the intent is for the revenue to meet the expenses. Is that correct? Not to have a constant loss.
Yeah, the intent is to have revenue coming in at a pace that not only takes care of our regular expenses, but
the future.
But to take care of a planned capital, 5-year plan.
Just one moment. Trustee Smith, Trustee Dickin, I was looking that way. Okay, thank you. Trustee Clayton, please.
Just to follow on with that a little bit, when we were at the finance workshop last, we gave a projection for the water fund that indicated that the water fund was going to have difficulty meeting its both its break-even status, but also maintaining the reserve. So the finance committee met a few days ago, and there'll be some more recommendations coming out with regard to what we think we should do to the water fund. It's a little premature to discuss all that right now, but we're working on it.
I was just looking to get on the record that the intent is that the revenue and expenditures over a period of time will balance.
I believe that's in the fund policy that we adopted back in 2022, something like that. It's supposed to be self-sufficient. And the financial operations we're catching up. Are there any other questions, more questions for our director? Thank you for your report. Next, the treasurer's report is not with us tonight. Director of Community Services, Director Witt, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to start my report with a correction and a bit of an apology. I learned a little something today about our road program, and the basis of that program essentially is kind of taking care of village roads at the same time as offering some economics and scale for the SSAs to be doing work. So at the last meeting, I indicated there was no village-related work as part of that program, thinking that it was to a point, but I thought that it was all buried within the alternate bid that we're not taking. However, I come to understand after looking through a bid tab that the village engineer had out in front of her today during a meeting that we had together. I see that there is about $30,000 of the $105,000 associated with doing some gravel repairs on the sides of some of the village roads. So just want to correct that for the record. This week, we submitted our responses to, or actually last week, we submitted the responses to Verisk for all of the information they were looking for the building department assessment. The information we gave took many hours to put together because it was a detailed compilation of the number of plan reviews, inspections, permits issued, broken down by project type, and broken down by trades, electric, mechanical, plumbing, who's doing what. So it's like how many of these you did, how many of those you did, and then they judge all of that. And then they also, I think, weigh that out versus the credentials that people have. And the other part of the whole submittal was a compilation of the credentials for many that are involved in all of this work, including inspectors, the permit coordinator, the code official, and even trustee levels. So that's all in their hands. They've indicated that they've received it. They feel that's all they're looking for at this point. I would kind of expect one more round of questions from them before they decide anything. We're still struggling with ICC to, excuse me, to get the 2 books that we need. One is not actually published at this point, even though it's 4 months into the season. They claim that we won't see those till the end of the second quarter. So I'm looking at some other ways, and we're just going to start with some of the other books and work on amendments, so when they come in, we can just hurry up and finish up. At the same time, we're going to be looking at the building permit fee schedule for the same reason that Trustee Hollander's raising for the water fund. The building department should be operating on fees coming in versus expenses going out. So that will take a bit of time, but it'll actually end up being a little easier to use, a little easier for the average person to say, hey, this is my project, here's what my anticipated fees are going to be. ComEd has begun to release data that we need to now go out for the village's municipal aggregation contract renewal. Mike Mudge figures that we may be able to get bid results as early as for presentation at the May 21st board meeting. So I have not had a chance to schedule that with the mayor, but that's the rough timeframe that we're looking for this year. Documents for the landscape work that's planned for the area around the police department should be going out for bids yet this week. So we should see that project start up within the next several weeks. Today, the chief and I interviewed a company that we believe will be doing well for providing building and property maintenance services for the village hall and the police department. The chief has had an opportunity to do at least one interview on the background of this person. They currently are working for Bannockburn, and based on what we heard today, we're optimistic that this will work well, but we're still investigating that and should have something at the next board meeting to hopefully move forward with a services agreement in that area. Construction work on the installation of the Saunders Road water main pipe. The pipe itself is completed. The line is now activated. It's been tested, chlorinated, and it's ready to go. Weather pending, the contractor will be extending the water service lines to the homes along Saunders Road somewhere within the next week. Though we probably lose the next 2 days in doing that with the rainfall that's anticipated. And then restoration work will begin thereafter, so that will hopefully close out that project fairly quickly. There was a pre-construction meeting held this morning for the 2024 road program. I'm going to let Engineer Smith provide an update for that after this report. Moving into enforcement actions, the next adjudication hearing is set for this Thursday. There is only one case, which is a follow-up on compliance. This is the case where there was storage of construction materials and equipment in the front yard. As of a week ago, it's still not in compliance, and we'll see what happens on Thursday. To make up for that, we have a construction site in town that's giving us a challenge. We issued 27 citations against it last week, and those citations will be heard on May 16th. And starting next meeting, per the board's request, we will be issuing a status summary of all citations that have been issued. We're going to be careful on the information that's actually provided there, but it'll give a summary of the case type, what the status was, when it was issued, things like that. So we'll be able to work with that. And certainly if there's additional information that we want to see on that, please let me know. In the planning end, we've essentially finished prepping the first case for an applicant seeking a variation to the woodland and tree protection ordinance. That case is going to the Zoning Board of Appeals on May 9th. It's been set out for publication and signage, so it is moving close. And we have 2 other cases for the ZBA for variations related to garage setbacks, and 1 other pending case for Plan Commission with regard to lot consolidation, which I'll be meeting with the property owner tomorrow. So that's my report for tonight.
Anyone have any questions for Director Witt? Trustee Clayton, please.
Just a note on the aggregation contract that there is a high degree of interest in the green energy alternative and how it's positioned within the aggregation contract.
Okay.
So when we get to discussing that, that'll be a matter of some interest.
I will have Mr. Mudge be able to speak to that at the hearing or at the meeting.
Are there any other questions, comments for our director? Okay, moving forward. Consultants report, attorney's report, please.
There are a couple of legislative things that have sort of been brewing for a while. One is the development of a planned development ordinance. The Plan Commission's been meeting with Tesca Associates. I know the chair would like to have a draft of that soon. There's a possibility. I have a draft on my computer to review. I think we've talked about this before. The idea is to set out parameters, based on what we hope is the intended use now of the Federal Reserve, federal insurance parcel. This ordinance would probably have mainly an effect for future development on Wolters Kluwer if it is ever developed, or elsewhere in the village. When we start looking at some of the text amendments that we need potentially for the federal life parcel, we'll look, maybe it'll be timely to look at the plan development ordinance. I know I see some folks here from Meadow Lake. We talked about removing the multifamily use out of the 1R district. It would not have any applicability anymore once federal life is developed. So we have like 3 different topics to try and tie together in some of the upcoming zoning changes. I just wanted to give the board kind of a heads up on where we would be going with that. Everything else I think is on the agenda.
The agenda. Thank you. Are there any questions at this point for our village attorney? Okay, moving on. Village engineer, please. Engineer Smith.
Good evening. First, I'd like to state that we've submitted all the documentation to get recertified under the WDO, which allows the community to be certified, which means that we review all permits when it comes to stormwater. It's not sent off to the county. So I've been working with the county. They have all the documentation that's up for approval this month at their board meeting. They've never gone against the staff, so I'm assuming that we'll get recertification again. That's every 5 years. We have to submit documentation for that. So we should be on the path of being a certified community for the next 5 years. Secondly, going with Director Witt's comments, we did have the pre-con today for the road program, and Shorter Asphalt is the one who was the low bid. They were there at the meeting. They plan on starting next week already. And then the contract, or the bid documents, had the contract completion by May 24th. So they have about a little over a month to complete all the various patching, crack filling, shoulder repair throughout the village, between village roads and private SSAs. So they plan on starting next week, and realistically, I think they're going to be, pending Mother Nature, they should be done well within their time frame. They have high hopes that they can be in and out in certain areas in a day. So with that, it was a very productive meeting, and like I said, hopefully they can start next week so they can get in and out of here. That's all I have.
Are there any questions for our village engineer? Thank you very much. That sounds really good.
All right, thanks.
Village ecologist isn't with us tonight. The Plan Commission, Chairman Brightcoff.
I don't have anything to report. Maybe next time, I hope.
Okay, thank you. Zoning Board of Appeals, Chairman Granitor, please.
Yeah, I think we swapped positions a little
You
bit.
swapped, yeah.
Just a little bit. The ZBA met on the 11th in our persona as the sign Board of Appeals, which apparently is separate. And this was a signage a request for a variance on signage on the building at, what was the address? 1195 Milwaukee, which is the building right on the corner that has the med spa and those other things. And there is a new tenant who's come in who really wanted to put a sign up with their name on it. But when we looked at the amount of signage on that building right now, it is at or by inches exceeds what our ordinance provides. And there really is no place that they can put a sign with the existing signs that are there. So it was a very brief meeting. We explained to the presenter, who was from the sign company, that as presented, we could not approve their request for a variance. We suggested that he go back and look at it again, see if he can find something that fits or work something out with the existing people who have signs up there. And he will be before the Zoning Board of Appeals, Signage Board of Appeals at our next meeting, which is on the 9th. That's all I have.
Are there any questions for our chairman? Thank you very much. Next, police report, chief.
I have in addition to the police activity that is in the your packets, I have a few other items to mention. First of all, we did receive a $10,000 grant from our insurance company, Illinois Counties Risk Management Trust, and that was towards the purchase of our body cameras that we recently put in use 2 weeks ago. And those have been going fine. Additionally, there will be another grant that just opened up with the state of Illinois, the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board, that should cover the rest of this year's costs for the cameras, the purchase of the cameras and the storage, the annual storage that we have to pay. And we'll continue to get that grant every year, or apply for that grant every year. I expect to get it. That'll cover the cost of our body cameras. Then on October 4th, we made a criminal damage to property arrest, and that was related to an incident that happened back in February in town on Portwine, actually, where a person had gone up to somebody's door looking for somebody, and they weren't happy with their answer, and allegedly struck the car with their hand and caused a dent. So we've been looking, we identified that person. I think I mentioned that to you at a previous board meeting, that Flock helped identify the person. And we did find the person in McHenry, Illinois, and brought him back here and charged him with a misdemeanor criminal damage to property. And then on April 7th, we had a battery. We charged a person with battery, and that was from an incident that happened on April 4th at the Thornton's gas station, where there was an altercation at the gas pump where a man grabbed a woman by the arm and pulled her pump out of her nozzle out of her car and squirted her with gas. So that was we were able to identify him through his license plate, but we couldn't find him at his last known residence. So we took the license plate on the car and we did a custom entry into our Flock camera system to alert us if he came into town. And sure enough, on the 7th, he did come into town on Deerfield Road, and the officers were able to pull him over and arrest him. On April 14th, we arrested a person for assault and criminal damage to property, also at Thornton's gas station. This happened when a person went into Thornton's asking for cigarettes and was asked for an ID and couldn't produce one, became upset, and broke some wine bottles and threatened to come back and shoot the attendant there. So we found him a couple blocks away after they called us and took him into custody. Additionally, we conducted compliance checks on April 14th in the evening, and we went to various establishments with an underage agent and attempted to buy cigarettes and/or alcohol. One of our restaurants did sell alcohol to the underage agent, and the server was cited for admin court for selling to underage person, and the case was turned over to the Liquor Commission, which is the mayor, for any further action against the restaurant. And that's all I have.
Are there any questions for our chief? Thank you very much. And I would ask everybody to note that there's a plaque out in the lobby, the ILEAP accreditation, which is very important, and we had that presentation at a prior board meeting. So the plaque is up. Moving on, Fire District, Chief Kruger, you're here with us.
Thank you, Board. A little bit of exciting news. So 2 weeks ago, Thursday, I think it was April 4th, we were called for a possible kitchen fire in Inverary subdivision. And as all the units were responding, it got upgraded to 2 people trapped. And sometimes you take it with a grain of salt because people get excited on the dispatch, but as they were even coming on the intersection of Milwaukee and Inver, they can smell that there's actually, you could tell the difference between burning leaves and a structure fire. So they knew right away. They upgraded the alarm, and as the first units pulled up to the scene, the house was the kitchen townhome was definitely on fire in the first floor, and the one husband was holding the door open, which, just to tell you right now, keep your doors closed at all times, because the more doors and windows you leave open, the more fire loves oxygen. So we try to tell people to close your door, close your bedroom door, but nevertheless, the door was wide open. He was halfway in, halfway out, but he kept saying his wife was trapped in the kitchen. So the house had undesirable conditions at the time. So firefighters moved in, started putting out the kitchen fire while making the rescue of the 2 victims. So they got transported to a local hospital, and then one of the residents was upgraded to a burn unit at Loyola. So they're still in the hospital. So, but it just, everybody probably sees on TV that firefighters are making rescues all the time. It's really rare, I'll be honest with you, that they actually make a bona fide rescue. And it's just a testament of our training and support from the community and everything else. So it's a job well done by the crew, but kudos to them.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I have.
Are there any questions for our chief at this point? Thank you very much, and
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Good work, good work. Well, I'm next. Information items and comments from the president. I would again remind the trustees, and if you have questions that you think might be answered by our consultants, but sometimes contacting staff first, those questions get answered faster, and we have a record of exactly what kinds of projects and issues are out there. So please call staff first. Next on the list, and I think that's probably what people want to hear about, is what we've talked about is putting a status update, a status report on the agenda regarding the Federal Life property. So we will continue to have that, so we make sure that we are communicating with everybody about what's going on. And I've asked our village attorney if he could please give us a status at this point.
The project has a lot of moving parts. One of them is coordinating with Lake County as they get ready to do the road widening project. The county was, as you know, going to come onto the site and provide storage for the county road project. And I know initially, and I just mentioned to the fire chief before the meeting, that we had thought when we first were discussing this idea that we maybe would try and piggyback on the county's work, have them come onto the site and create all of the stormwater detention. In some discussions with the county, some of the issues with that are that they've already had the design done, it's already been approved, and in order for them to get approval to redesign the storage to fit the site plan that we're talking about, and to get funding for that is a heavy lift. So I started having some discussions with Hager Engineering, Todd Schaefer, because that firm had done all of the legwork in developing the stormwater plan for the Lexington proposal. And they're qualified civil engineers. They had spent a lot of time detailing the existing conditions on the site. So one of the things that we've done is ask them to share some of the information that they have. They shared CAD files and drawings with our land planner. They shared them with the fire district's planner. And we asked Todd if he could provide a proposal for updating his information, his reports. And his idea was to do initially a set of concept meetings where we look at the Federal Life site, we look at the requirements of the fire district, we look at the stormwater requirements, and we come up with basically a new design for the basin. The basin that was going to go in there was going to go all the way in the northwest corner. I don't know if you remember from the first meeting we have. If you move the basin to be just north of the fire district, it needs a new design. There needs to be design work. And in talking about that, we started talking about the idea that maybe it made sense to go back to the model that was going to be used before, which is that the village engages the engineer, gets the design that we want with the native vegetation around the basin with the slopes at 4:1 or 5:1 instead of what the county normally does. And that we therefore have control of the site and we actually perform the work and then get reimbursement from the county. The county was prepared to do that with Lexington, so I don't know why they wouldn't be prepared to do that with us. And I've had that discussion preliminarily with the county that the county would basically reimburse us when we go on the site and create storage for our uses, but also for the county project. So that's a possibility. I have a meeting, Director Witt and I have a meeting a week from today with just staff at Lake County who want to discuss with us some of the issues that they have and how to come up with a different design, how to coordinate with the timing that we have in terms of being reimbursed. Realistically, unless the stars all align and we're able to get payment from the county at very much the same day at which we close with Federal Life, which is difficult to line up all the stars that way, then it looks like the village would have to be prepared to come out of pocket with the difference between the fire district's contribution and the purchase price and seek reimbursement from the county after that. So I can't, right now, there doesn't look to be like an easy path to have it all be a concurrent event. And we talked about the village coming out of pocket with some money. So I just want to alert the board that might be coming our way to take a look at that. But realistically, we also had a brief meeting with Federal Life last week as well. You know, they have hired an attorney. They're disputing the county's offer that the county has currently made to them to acquire the rights to create storage on the Federal Life parcel. And they think that the offer is only half of what it should be. So in my argument to the county is that the village comes in and you don't have to fight the fight with the private landowner. There should be some value in that and there should be some way of recognizing that. So we're still at this is really the very first high-level discussion we've had about it. All to now, it's just been conceptual. After I have the meeting next week, we'll report back to the board and we'll start getting some real feedback on what's doable for the board and what's not.
Trustee Hollander, please.
Without using actual numbers, is the revenue that we expected to get for the county for the revised retention, although I understand it's not going to be revised through them, is that approximately the same? Or is there a present plan that they're not moving off of going to give us less revenue?
That is one of the questions because right now they made an offer for a particular legally described bounded area of a certain size, but the size of that area was intended to accommodate I think it was 3.3 acre feet of storage. So they still need the same. In fact, they need more storage now than they needed before because they have to take on a little more storage from Thornton's that they hadn't anticipated with the bike path that they're putting in. So they need the same amount of storage. It's just configured differently. So I don't, in my mind, it's the same. And one of the things we're trying to figure out is if it's in their mind the same.
Trustee Clayton, please.
Again, just a note, I think one of the things that the board requested was some kind of a calendar, a project plan over time, especially with regard to when funds need to be put in and put out. I realize that's still being defined, but that's something that I think the board would find very useful.
Yeah. As all these discussions are starting to be held, as Attorney Huvard is following our direction to construct a letter of intent. But I think a process map makes perfect sense, so we know who's on first and where we are. As these things start to solidify, if you will, now staff has, had an opportunity, Director Witt will have an opportunity, but again, that as these things move forward, this is up to date, is what we can tell you. Trustee Clayton, please.
Not just also with regard to the financial cash flow in and out, because I think it's important to us with regard to all the things we have going on within the village to understand what cash has to go out when and what cash might come back in when.
As I think what we did with the building of the building, we connected with our investment advisor in terms of maturities and things like that too. So we'll want to connect that. Okay. Okay, thank you. Moving on, there's no new business. There's no old business. Visitors wishing to address the board. We have a crowd tonight, so this is good. This is good. Russ, you want to come up first? I don't have to call everybody by name, right?
Hello, is that good?
Yes, thank you.
My name is Russ Romanelli. I live at 2314 Glen Eagles. And I just wanted to share a few questions or comments about this whole firehouse thing. First of all, forgive me if the answer to this first question is maybe my own ignorance of not seeing some things, but it all seemed to bubble up rather quickly. Just a few weeks ago, all of a sudden, we're talking about a new firehouse, and I've seen nothing, and again, maybe it's out there and I just missed it, and if that's the case, forgive me. But I've seen nothing that says why we need a new firehouse. I mean, I've never been inside the existing one, but it sure looks like a pretty nice building. As I drive by, if you ask me, it seems more than adequate. And if we did do something like this, what would we do with the old building? I mean, that's a pretty big facility there, and I don't know that firehouses have a great deal of secondary use opportunities. And then I think, why would we take the firehouse that is currently seems to be pretty conveniently located, sort of the center of the town, and move it way over on the western boundary of the town? Now, that's not a great, huge distance. Riverwoods isn't that big of a town, but I don't see the wisdom in that. But maybe it's just, I don't understand the whole thing. And then, I haven't seen anything about what's an overall cost picture of doing something like this. It's got to be pretty significant. What's something like this going to mean to our tax bills from the fire district or whoever else would be paying for this? I mean, I think it's a pretty significant sum. Now, I haven't seen anything about this, and maybe the fault is mine. Maybe it's been put out there somewhere and I just missed it. It wouldn't be the first time. So maybe someone could point me in the right direction. I know this isn't the format here for a back and forth. This is just an opportunity for me to share a few things and then go sit down. If the answer to my questions is, well, Russ, it's coming, just be a little patient, then fine, I can live with that too. I can wait until all of these things and other things are explained. But these were just some thoughts in my mind over the last couple of weeks, and I just wanted to take a moment and share these with you and
Well, that's
give
a
you my
multi-part
thoughts.
question, the need and so forth. I don't know that we don't typically do this during this back and forth, but I'm kind of betting other people would have maybe some of the same questions about that, the need and so forth. If I'm not being too bold and putting you on the spot, Chief, would you like to answer the question about need? I don't want you to, go further than what your board
No,
would
I'll try-
allow
I'll
you
try to
to
be
go
brief.
either, so.
It's rather lengthy. So we currently have 3 fire stations, and a fire district or fire department of our size, based upon call volume, is really a 2 fire station district. Nevertheless, we did build 3 fire stations, and if you know where our stations are located, obviously the one is by Riverwoods, and we have one on Shelter Road in Lincolnshire. Then we also have one it's a mile away, it's our newest fire station from our main station. So we have 2 fire stations we have 3 fire stations that are strategically ineffective for responses.
Chief, may I interrupt
Go
just
ahead.
one moment, please? The fire district has different boundaries than the village of Riverwoods. And actually, the chief's station on Saunders Road is located in the Deerfield-Bannockburn Fire
Right.
District. So if I could give you a little background with that. So Chief,
Right.
please, I'm sorry.
So we thought, and based upon our staffing at our one fire station, we only have 2 firefighters at a station that was built in 2009 at a really expensive cost. So we decided, in our main station that was built in 1993 is in dire need of repair. So we had an architect come in 2018 and do an evaluation. He said, tear it down, you can repair it, or you can probably, most cost efficient is to tear it down and rebuild a new one. That doesn't solve our problem that we have 3 fire stations that are not strategically, they should be all on Milwaukee Avenue. So we had a study from the Illinois Fire Chiefs Consulting Group that came out and did a station allocation study. So what they do is they look at your current fire stations, they take all your calls from a 5-year period, and they determine the best location for 3 fire stations. Because we were going to keep 3 fire stations in 2018. So that came about, and in that first study, they said, to best improve your response time for the district, not just for Riverwoods, for the entire district, is to move that current fire station exactly where Federal Life is. And we said, that's great, but Federal Life at the time isn't going anywhere, and it's not realistic. So we decided to consolidate our 2 fire stations up north into 1. And that would kind of improve our response times, but it also will reduce our costs by a third, because we're now only maintaining 2 fire stations instead of 3. We can take those 2 individuals and allocate them to the 2 outlying stations and increase our staffing in our vehicles. So in 2023, we did another study by the same group, Illinois Fire Chiefs, for the purpose of a station allocation study to see what the effects would be by consolidating 2 fire stations and leaving the Riverwoods Fire Station there. And their recommendation came back again. Yes, it's okay to consolidate 2 fire stations, but you need, for the best response times and more efficient and fiduciary responsible, move the Riverwood Station onto Milwaukee and Deerfield, because all of our calls, if you look, are on Milwaukee corridor. So that's where elevated care, where there are 2 or 3 times a day. But that is the best overall for the best group for the district. And I know I mentioned the fire rescue we had the other day. Just doing rudimentary numbers, that call was 3.5 miles away from that fire station there, with about a 7 or 8 minute response time. Moving the fire station at Federal Life, you're looking at 1.3 miles in about a 3 to 4 minute. Now, that's a long time for us because of, I'm not going to get in science too deep, but everything is made of plastic, and fires burn a lot faster and hotter than they did back in the day, which puts risk for the individual, the resident, and for our firefighters when they get there. Depending on the nature, they leave the doors open, or depending how, how much contents they have, it's hotter and it's more dangerous for the firefighters to go in there. So that being said, we went to the village board a while ago and we said, is there any property available in that Deerfield, Milwaukee? And we kind of spitballed some ideas, and Federal Life wasn't even in the picture. And then all of a sudden, Federal Life approached them that they wanted to, I'm not speaking for the board, but sell the building, right? I mean, for a reasonable cost.
Yeah.
So that was after we had that discussion. So that's how this popped up really sudden. We didn't foresee this, but it was the best opportunity but for us right now. We're even pursuing property. If you know Ernie's gas station on Milwaukee Avenue, they have a piece of land, 2 acres, that we're looking at purchase to consolidate our 2 fire stations. So now, if we go with the current plan and we go with the Riverwood station is the priority. That's our focus right now, because that increases our response times, not increases, betters our response time from 54% from making our 4-minute response time mark. That's what the NFPA, the national standard is. It goes from 54% to 75% coverage. So that is a huge, and not just the response times, it's very important. Don't get me wrong, but for financially, operationally, it just makes sense for us. So now, if this plan comes to fruition, now we only have to build maybe 1 fire station instead of building 2 brand new fire stations to get them all on Milwaukee Avenue. So it was quick for us too. So don't get me wrong. I understand that it kind of just fell in our lap, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Excuse me. No, wait.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. You'll
Time out.
wait until the chief is finished,
Sorry.
and we'll take
They get the rules.
We'll take visitors'
I can-
comments in a minute.
Part of this analysis was discussed by the board when the board was determining whether it should even look at acquiring this. Federal Life brought in another developer. We had a meeting with that developer. We looked at the plan. It wasn't all that dissimilar from the Lexington plan. Then the developer left, and Federal Life was meeting with the mayor and I and said, have you ever thought of any public use for the site? Because we don't want to really sign with another developer and be, before you for another year, but we're moving, we're leaving the building, so we have to do something. And the chief had met with us, a month before that, so it was sort of fresh in our minds. And during that conversation, Federal Life had also shared the amount of compensation that the county had offered for the permanent easement. The county has offered Federal Life over $1 million for the permanent easement on the site. So this also then occurred in public session with the board here. We learned that Federal Life would accept a purchase price of $3 million. And so if the county was going to come out of pocket with $1 million, the fire district has indicated preliminarily a willingness to spend $2 million for the part of the site that they would need. So the initial thought was that the village would have engineering, site development, and other costs, but not very excessive land costs. So we'd end up facilitating what happens for the fire district, helping them out from a public policy standpoint, and also having control of the whole balance of the site. Now, you heard me say earlier, there are a lot of moving parts here in order to accomplish that. We don't have all the numbers yet. You hear the board wanting to know what all the numbers are, and so does the fire district. We don't have all the numbers. I mean, we know, for example, that demolishing the building itself is going to take a lot of money. And so one of the things that Director Witt and I are doing is trying to put together a development budget that anticipates these various costs. And we just don't have that yet, but we will share that with you. And that's part of the purpose of these status updates at the board level. So as we get information, we can make it available.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other visitors wishing to address the board at this point?
She want to answer a question.
Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah.
Sure. If you could
think you need a
please use
microphone.
the microphone. I think there's one, either that or pop up. Yeah. It's just the getting it on tape part. Thank you, Chief.
I'm Cheryl Borden, and I'm at 13 Chicory Lane in Riverwoods. Of course, I'm in Meadow Lake. My question is to the Chief Sergeant of Fire. Is anywhere else covered in Riverwoods with the fire station right now? If the one that's on Sanders is Bannockburn in Deerfield, Riverwoods, do we even have our own fire department?
So it is in the village of Riverwoods, the fire station, but fire districts are kind of weird that they have different boundaries. So that right in that boundary, like it cuts through Thorngate, I think like from Masters all the way on to Lake Cook Road, you can draw a line like all the way up through. So it is in Deerfield's fire protection district, but it is in the village of Riverwoods.
So the new fire building would be Riverwoods and Lincolnshire. So Lincolnshire goes pretty far north.
Right.
So what is the response time, when Lincolnshire gets calls compared to Riverwood calls? Is it going to be just the one station?
It actually will improve. It'll actually improve because we'll have two stations. We'll still have our station up by Lifetime Fitness, and then we'll have the station over here on Milwaukee Avenue. So when you get the stations on Milwaukee Avenue, your response times alone, that's what gives you, saves the most time. So you don't have to, come all the way down from over there. You don't have to slow down through traffic, but we'll still have two fire stations. And you'll have a fire station in Village of Riverwoods. We're just taking that fire station and moving it right to Milwaukee Avenue.
Now.
Yeah, if you're curious about the boundaries, there is a map of the fire districts on our website. And I think the newsletter, the electronic newsletter, the update we put out, was it last week or the week before, has a link to that map. So you can either go directly to our website and there's a map of the two districts that cover the village of Riverwoods.
Has a plan been drawn already about?
They've been in existence for quite some time. The Lincolnshire Riverwoods Fire District has been in existence for a very long time, and the Deerfield Bannockburn Fire District has also been in existence.
So we help each other out. So when we get a major call or a big fire, Deerfield comes by us, we'll go by them. We have Northbrook that comes in. So we have they're called automatic aid agreements where they're already set up with our dispatch because we're not like the city of Chicago where we can throw everything at it. All the neighboring towns give a fire engine, a big ladder truck or an ambulance, and we all help each other out. So it's not like we're moving the station and there's no coverage there anymore. It's theoretically the same coverage, but overall for the district, it improves it dramatically.
It will. Thank you.
Right.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for your question.
Thank you for your question. Trustee Hollander, did you have?
Yep, maybe I can make a comment and the attorney might correct me just for general information. The Fire Protection District isn't part of Riverwoods in the sense we have no control over that. They don't report to us. They have their own board, their own governmental entity. The only connection we have with them is selling them a piece of the land so they can put their station on it. But we don't have any control over what they do or where they do it, or how they respond. So that the questions that came up with why should they move or what are they going to do with the old building, that doesn't come under our board or our providence. So there is totally separate entity from the Village of Riverwoods. And maybe that'll explain that the control we have is zero. And the only thing we're doing is providing a piece of land that they're looking for, that we're looking to provide for them. That's the extent of our involvement. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
So that when you ask questions about their decision making or why they're doing it, they're good questions, but it shouldn't be addressed to us. Yeah. Take advantage of him.
Yeah.
Right.
But we wouldn't make a decision without consulting, without cooperation with the board. So we have a good relationship. So it's not like we're just running in there and taking over, but you could say no still. So.
Well, a long time ago, somebody asked if you could take a look at the Herman Wildflower Farm, and that was a hard no.
Yeah, right. We've exhausted a lot of efforts, and we never thought this federal, you couldn't ask for a better spot. I mean, that's the exact spot where they said, you need to put it there because if you put it across the street, it's just harder for us to get onto Milwaukee Avenue. You couldn't ask for a better spot. I mean, it was,
Yeah.
we thought it was a joke when they asked us. I'm being facetious, but thank you.
Are there any comments from the trustees? Okay, seeing none and no one else wishes to address the board this evening? Thank you all for coming, by the way. No reason to go into executive session. The next date and time for our regular meeting is May 7th at 7:30 right here in Village Hall. Do I have a motion for adjournment, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much.